Hey there everybody, this is the Wandering Ukie and you have come to my Q&A episode that I've been promising for a while. So first I want to send my thanks to everybody who sent me a question over the last little while, whether it was to me personally, on the YouTube channel, or even through my Instagram page or other means. This is going to be great because it gives me an idea to see what you're all curious about and see if I can shoot the shit on anything interesting. So without further ado, let's get this started. Now let's start from the top. So Raphael337 here says, "Hi Ukie, 2 questions. First, how are you doing lately? Second, what is your favorite neighborhood in Montreal and why? Sending my best." Thanks Raphael, and it was also nice seeing you at the Jean Talon Market and around Central Station when I was done at the office. It just goes to show that you never know if you're going to be running into your viewers at the most random spots. But I guess first off, I'm doing fine. Mostly keeping busy with my day job, also trying to get as much content created while I'm having my days off, but at the same time, take time for myself to unwind and also, focus on adult life. Because a house like this, it's not going to take care of itself because we don't have a Rosie the robot to help with our daily chores, do we? That's going to happen like maybe in 100 years, if not 1,000 years. And the second question for my favorite neighborhood, that might be a bit biased, but I would say it's the Rosemont area for a twofold reason. First, I'm originally from Rosemont because my grandparents had moved over there eventually. My parents are living there and we were renting the upstairs apartment from her or from my grandmother when I was born. And we used to go back over there a lot of times to see her and just hang around. And I felt over the years it was a place that drew to me a lot because it brought back some old memories, but also because as time went on, I saw that the neighborhood had changed a lot and there's a lot more to explore with adult eyes or even like with 30, almost 40-year-old eyes. So I guess it's a easy answer for that. So thanks again. Next up, we got 2 questions from Julie Belrose. Well, I'm only going to do one right now. The other one I'm going to save for a little bit later. She's saying, can you do an episode on your top 5 best or nicest places that you visited in Montreal and why? You really want me to narrow it down to 5 places? That's kind of tricky. But I guess what I could do is, my first one, I could tie back to my previous answer and say La Petite Patrie, which is a part of the Rosemont La Petite Patrie district of Montreal. And if you're not sure about that one, you're going to find a few nice spots. The Jean Talon Market, one of my favorite markets to visit around the city. The Little Italy area, which has a lot of good Italian coffee shops. Vices and Versa, the bar that I like to visit on Saint Laurent, Saint Zotique. Plaza Saint-Hubert has a couple of things, so that gives you an idea of one of my favorite spots because it's really gotten trendy over the years compared to when I was a kid passing by with my parents. And I guess the second one I could say is Mile End. I've been there over the years because of the bagel shops. I used to visit the one on Fairmount and Saint Beata, especially Saint Beata because I was raised to believe that Saint Beata is the best of the lot, but your mileage may vary depending on who you talk to. But as I've gone on over the years, I've walked through there, I found there's a lot of interesting places to go grab a drink. So for a guy like me who likes craft beer, I've got Cibois, I've got Dieu du Ciel, and the Helm Brewery alone. For coffee shops, you also got Alphabet Cafe, Café Olympico, Le Petit Dep, all 3 with their own distinct characters. And even then, if you're into other stuff besides coffee and beer, go to Bernie's Donuts. It's on Bernard. That's where it's located, and there's always a lineup over there. It's like one of the first artisanal donut shops before Homer started to pop up at like every neck of the woods. Third one, I guess you could say, is Old Montreal. And the reason for that is because it kind of ties into my previous life, like a pre-COVID. That's when I was just working mostly downtown 5 days a week at the office. And if I wanted to stay on a Friday, Saturday, go grab a drink, I mostly end up downtown or Old Montreal because I like the vibe over there. You got a lot of the old architecture that was preserved from the 1600s, 1700s. So in some ways, you could kind of get an idea of what the city would have looked like back centuries ago. But there's always nice stuff around there. Plaza Jacques-Cartier, you have some nice entertaining terraces and sometimes entertainers on the streets. Kind of remember one time where I was made to roar like a lion because of, some guy performing, and I'm not going to get into that story right now. But also there's the Bolsicle Market with Brewski's Pub. My favorite spot to get a drink because it's another microbrewery. They make everything on the spot. Next one I guess I could say is Verdun, specifically Wellington, just because you got Benelux there, you got Le Trèfle, a great Irish pub with a lot of diversity on the taps. You got also La Bêtise, great tapas bar where there's only 2 locations left. That one there in Verdun and the one at the St. Bruno Mall. And that's just like scratching the surface, because if you're looking for other food there, that whole stretch is amazing. And I guess if I want to cheat a little bit, there's the Plateau Montreal. And I know that encompasses a lot, because if you're looking at certain streets, like you go to Saint Laurent Boulevard, Duluth Avenue, Rachel Avenue, or Rachel Street, Mont-Royal Avenue, even Saint Denis, you got no shortage of places to go. And for someone like me who's a pedestrian likes to walk around, that thing is a treasure trove of good spots to check. So thanks, Julie, for that nice question. Next question comes from Nico QC, who also has his own YouTube channel where he streams video games. So I'm going to put that card in the show notes because I want to help promote a friend and the video that he creates to one content creator to another. And he's saying, do you see yourself doing any vlogs in other cities, provinces, or even countries? Well, definitely. If I start traveling again, then you can bet that I'm going to be doing a lot more of that too. And one thing that people probably don't know if they have just started following me is that one thing that helped me get inspired to do this channel was my trip to Spain and especially Italy. Italy, I recorded a lot of footage back in 2019 of me wandering the streets, showing some transitional footage because I knew at the time that I would probably want to put that together into a long form video, and maybe, I don't know, just thought it could have been a cool project to kind of take what I did in Spain, which was just a few short vignettes, a couple of minutes, and expand on that. It took me a year, but then it got completed. If you want to see that episode, then I'm putting a card in the top right corner for you to watch that. But yeah, there's a couple of spots I do want to visit next time I'm around, so I know that there's a lot of European cities with the art, the architecture for someone like me who's a pedestrian. I got Quebec City that I love visiting with a lot of walking too. It gives you an idea of what a European city would look like without going to Europe. And I know that I have some stories that go to Ottawa if ever I go around there, because I remember having been there since 2018 for Canada Day. So yeah, all that to say, there's plenty for me to see all around the world. It's just a matter of finding the time and especially finding the money for it. Hello, I'm Alexander is saying, what are your favorite albums that help inspire your videos and walks? You know, if you talk about music with me, then I could probably go on forever with that. And actually, I could probably devote an episode entirely to my musical taste or even do a Q&A on that next time. But mostly what I've been inspired by lately is a lot of the music from the era of my parents. So you're thinking stuff that would have been on the oldie stations back then, Motown, Stax Records, like kind of some stuff like that that makes you think back to memories of them and kind of preserving their memories. And actually, that was a big theme for me back in 2022 over the summer when I was recording a whole bunch of videos around the city with that as a musical backdrop. And I'll put a card in the top right corner if you want to watch that entire playlist all together. But honestly, it's really just whatever is on my mind. And sometimes I hear a random song and I'll think, oh, maybe I could use this for a wander, for a montage. It could be stuff like David Bowie that comes up, as you can see over here because of my musical taste. The Pink Floyd poster that's actually fallen down right now, so that's not good. But at least I have it on the mug here immortalized. And that gives you an idea. Oh yeah, I also did a whole episode on my dad's style of music because my parents had very different styles. There was my dad who was into Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, versus my mom who was into Hall & Oates, Elton John, the Monkees, Partridge Family, you know, to give you an idea. So I kind of blended all those together and made up my own, shall we say, style, and veering off into different directions too. But really, it's just me listening to my music and kind of using these wanders as a backdrop to show off the music that's near and dear to me, and sometimes hoping that other people will notice. Thanks, Alex. Oh, that didn't last very long. Anyways, let's move on. Sam Spadoni is saying, who is your favorite Fuck on a stick. Anyway, Sam Spadoni is saying, who is your favorite traveling Wilbury? Really? Which one of the 5 am I going to choose from? If I was to give you a bit of background for what that's all about, the Traveling Wilburys is this album that was released, I think, in 1988, if I'm not mistaken, but it consists of 5 members, all legends in their own right. So here's an idea. You got Bob Dylan, Jeff Lynne from Electric Light Orchestra, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, and George Harrison all together. So three generations of three generations of rock and roll all together in one go. And it was just a bunch of friends getting together to jam, and it somehow made one of the best albums of the 80s. Now, in my opinion, who was my favorite one of them? I don't know. Bob Dylan really had a career revival with the songs he wrote with them. You had George Harrison, who kind of became creatively inspired just by bringing them all together. Although, truth be told, that was after working with Jeff Lynne for his solo album before that. Then there was Roy Orbison, who was on the verge of another renaissance, which sadly didn't live long enough to see, because You Got It, She's a Mystery to Me, like those songs off his last album while he was alive, that was released after he passed away, those are classics. Yeah, I'm sorry, Sam, I can't really answer that one. I can't choose one of them. You can't really say one Wilbury is better than the other because they all complement each other to become an awesome band. Oh, here we go. Mark Lynn Lionel 17163 says, what is the connection between Wandering Ukie and the Cheese Cafe? Actually, I've gone over that story before, but it always bears repeating. So Wandering Ukie is the name I gave myself for my Instagram page, just because I felt like I'm Ukrainian, and Ukie is a cute way of saying it. And Wandering kind of encompassed the fact that I was all over the place trying to show off parts of Montreal or traveling the world, so that kind of worked out. The Cheese Cafe, I have to credit to Canadian Dave in the comments section because he came up with that as I was putting together a coffee table during the pandemic in the backyard just for fun. Cheese kind of ties into my style of humor where it's like, I don't really know how else to describe it. I just know that we have scales like rancid cheddar, brutal cheddar, and etc. But when you combine them together, it's like Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe. It almost feels like it's saying something similar to Monty Python's Flying Circus, one of my favorite shows of all time, just because of how over the top, how silly it is, and just how batshit insane it can be. And that, along with The Simpsons, kind of shaped my sense of humor. Without those shows, I wouldn't be me. Ugh. I hate sneezing in between takes. It messes up the hair. Now, next question is Phil Samur, who's asking, do you occasionally drink wine? Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, but I'm always showing off beer on the channel. That's not to say I don't enjoy an occasional glass of wine, because I have done that before. And one good example was a nice Italian restaurant around Monkland Avenue in NDG, and also around Buvette Beaubien. Well, it's like a nice place where you could sit down for a light meal, have a drink, and just enjoy the vibes. Well, yeah, I also did that when I was first visiting the Eaton's restaurant, Le Neuvième, that's on the 9th floor of the old Eaton's building. And I'll put a card in the top right corner for you to watch that one in case you're curious. But yeah, I like wine sometimes. I just don't show it off on the channel as much. My thing is that I'll usually have split a bottle if I'm with family for certain gatherings, like for Easter, for Christmas, with a certain number of friends. Like I have a few groups of them that enjoy having a wine. Or on the rare occasion I'm on a date with a lady and we decide to split a bottle. It doesn't happen that often, but that is one time that I do get to do that. But if you want to know what my favorite types of wine are, in terms of whites, I like French wines mostly, especially Sancerre. I don't like it when it's too sweet. I like it oaky and dry, and ones that don't really have a texture where if you drink it and then rub your lips together, are you going to get too much friction? That kind of stuff is like, yeah, that's too sweet for my liking. Reds, I like Spanish, and I like Italian ones too. That's just my style. My way of figuring out if I like a wine or not is mostly if I look at the grams of sugar per liter on the labels. I find that 2 to 3 grams of sugar per liter is the sweet spot for me, although I have a tolerance for up to 6 grams just to accommodate certain friends. Oh, and that reminds me, I should probably plug these guys too. I've got a nice Malbec from Ocho Gauchos, Argentinian wine that comes from a private import that I got through a special means. And no, I'm not being paid to promote this. I just like the product and I thought I'd share it with you. And we got 2 questions here from Lily Loves Vinny. The first one here is, what's your favorite brewery in Montreal? Narrowing out down to 1. Well, I guess the first one that comes to mind is Ile de Garde. And I've covered this a few times on the channel when I was going through the Petit Patrie area, because I love the selection of beers that they had. And it's on a part of Beaubien Street East that I've walked by countless times. Towards the end of 2022, I was looking inside and I thought, wait, this is a craft beer joint? How have I been walking here for the last year and not even notice it? Apparently by that point they were around for a good 8 years or so. I love it there. I love the Sam Jackson burger, and what can I say? And they have a really sick whiskey selection too. If ever you were into that, I want to give it a visit. Second question is, what's your favorite album by The Cure? Dave, how do I know it's not you sending the questions under an alias? But yeah, I do dig The Cure. If you want me to pick my album of choice, it's going to be either between Disintegration. Oh, hang on, there's too much light. There you go. Disintegration or Pornography. No, that doesn't mean I like porn. What that means is these are my style of Cure albums. I know a lot of you probably think of something like Just Like Heaven, Friday I'm in Love, and those are two good songs, but honestly, I really like the minor key, the dark and dreary kind of Cure. Like, that's my kind of Cure. Although some stuff, like, I'll admit, Pornography I would not recommend to listen just any time because it is pretty depressing and you got to be in the mood for it. So yeah, thanks Lily, or should I say Vinny? I don't know which one to congratulate. Okay, Pierre-Olivier Belzil says, "Hi Nick, I remember discussing music with you back at HMV, but movies not so much. So my question for you is, what are your 3 favorite movies? Thanks, and keep on wandering." Well, Pierre-Olivier, that is true because I was always a music guy more so than a movie guy, so I didn't have the same knowledge to the same degree I had of bands. That's not to say that I don't have any knowledge, period, because I know some directors I'd be able to spot their styles if ever I see them. Like, if I was to see something that looks very whimsical, kind of dreamy, kind of a flat background, I think, that's a Wes Anderson film, isn't it? Like John Carpenter, I like his minimalist style, his music, and all those other things I could get into about it. But if you were to make me narrow it down to only 3 movies, top one would probably be The Dark Knight. Probably my favorite Batman movie of all time. And this is coming from a guy who saw the '89 movie when it was like, well, I was young enough to have lived through the whole hype when that was first released in '89. And all the toys that came out, but I didn't really watch until much later on. My point of reference for Batman was always the 1960s show, especially this movie before I even knew that it was from the 1960s. But Dark Knight, that was one instance where I was kind of eager to see it after watching Batman Begins, because I saw all the previews, I saw the social media marketing. Like, this is back when viral marketing was really taking off. Even the Heath Ledger Joker, I thought, what the hell? But then I saw the final product and I was convinced. It's probably the biggest, like, of all the movies I've seen, like, that was one that I was like the biggest fan. It was like one I was most eager to see. Probably the peak of my Batman fandom too. And getting to see that on the IMAX screen, that was something else. And as for my other movies, well, I would say Monty Python and the Holy Grail is another one of them. Again, Monty Python is a big part of my sense of humor. I love the silly stuff. I like how it's making a mockery of just about everything in there. And that's kind of tame because if you were to watch The Life of Brian after that, it goes even further than that. We're mocking just about everything. But I remember that when I was in high school that we were in a drama class. A couple of people were doing a skit on the Holy Grail itself. And this is before I even knew a thing or two about Monty Python besides, you know, the random commercials that were playing on PBS. And I guess seeing them do that, it made me want to check out the movie. And here I am, a fan today. Number 3, I would say Back to the Future. I remember watching a lot of those as a kid before I even knew a thing or two about movies. I know we bought the VHS of Back to the Future 2 for my dad for Christmas, but I took it out of the bag by mistake and he saw it, only to kind of spoil the surprise. It's, it's one of those movies that it stands on its own. Great special effects for the time, a fun story, and even if you're to go back after multiple viewings, there's always some little jokes in there, or little trivia bits that you could see and think, okay, so it's like a callback or a foreshadowing, or it kind of ties it all together. It's one of those that has a lot of layers to it. Oh yeah, Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, you know, you can't really beat him. I know, it's heavy. But hey, thanks again, Pierre-Olivier, and next time I'm in Quebec City, we gotta grab that pint eventually. No question about it. Okay, next up is Mary Lee asking, when will you start giving guided tours? Guided tours? Well, depends on what you want me to give a tour of. Do you want me to give a tour of my home, like all the stuff where I was learning about my family history, being a Wandering Ukie, doing a hop around the cafe, bar, to a restaurant, and to a bar, or finding other interesting stuff? I'd be down for that. And if it comes to doing a vlog of it, then something I always have to keep in mind is not everybody is camera friendly. Like sometimes you put a camcorder right in front of some people, they do a dive around the corner and they do not want to be filmed whatsoever. But I've had some collaborations in the past. Like perfect example would be Julie Belrose, who asked a question earlier where we did a couple of episodes together wandering around. One of the most recent ones was us going into Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu to kind of visit a record store that our old boss is running, and eventually go into Ville-Aimable to look at her childhood places where she lived, kind of like me looking through Rosemont with my memories. And if you want to see that one, I'll put a card in the top right corner to watch that. But yeah, all that to say, guided tours could be a thing to happen one of these days, whether on camera or off camera. Just a matter of how do I organize it. So next up is Tim Dan 8904 asking, would you ever do a traveling Ukie episode outside of Montreal? You know, that does tie into what Nico QC had asked earlier in the episode, but yep, I definitely want to do episodes outside of Montreal. I think for me, the main draw is the walkability of there, where I could get from one borough of Montreal to another easily on foot and keep it interesting while doing musical montages. Because I like to walk, I still use public transit. I do have my driver's license, but honestly, I don't own a car, despite the fact that I live on the suburbs. Yeah, you might think I'm crazy for that, but the thing I have to remember too is I got my license shortly before the pandemic, and because there was a lot of time where I was working from home, most of my trips are in Montreal, and I'm pretty local, I have to think, can I justify the added expense of a car for everything that I want to do? Because let's face it, a car, it's a money pit. And I'm not even going to get into all the expenses too, because anyone who owns one knows what I'm talking about. But sure, one of these days, I definitely want to do other stuff outside. But as long as there's a treasure trove of stuff here, like even stuff on the West Island or other parts of Montreal I haven't explored yet, there's always something else. And now we got Andrew Kalust, who gave me a mountain of questions. Well, thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it and give me enough material to work with. First one here is, what are your top 5 cafes? Top 5 cafes? Well, one of them is going to be Cafe Pista, hands down. It was my first introduction, or at least my first real introduction to micro roasters that are around here and the third wave movement. And them, I love the style of coffee. In fact, I always keep a bag of beans with them over here because I have my regular beans I use for espresso, but I always have these for on weekend or when I feel like treating myself. That's one of them. I would say there's Newsome Cafe is another good one. They're around Prince Arthur Street East, close to an area where my grandparents were living when they first came to Canada. So I like having the connection of going there, thinking back to when we used to go to some Greek restaurants in the past with family, and knowing that I have the family connection to that, which I'm kind of grateful for. Third spot I would say is Le Beau Marché around Old Montreal. It's like on Notre Dame. When you go inside, it kind of has the vibe of a French, like European grocery store. And if you want to get an espresso there, you're looking at $2.50 Canadian, which is insane in 2025. Like, try find that kind of price when you're mostly going to be paying $3-4 for a single shot, among other things that are around there. I guess there's also Le Petit Dep that has a nice vibe. There's actually 2 locations I like to go to a lot. One is on Saint Laurent in Mile End, just like a hop and a skip away from Cibois. I like the whole decor, what looks like some of the old style furniture, old style, I guess, not appliances, but like light fixtures and such. But then another interesting one is on De la Montagne in Griffintown, where you walk in, you kind of sense that based on the structure around there, it used to be a machine shop. Almost like they kind of preserved everything like it would have looked like back in the day. And I guess if I was to choose a final one for number 5, Cafe Olympico is kind of nice. You have to go to the Mile End location where that's the original spot. It's huge. It's always lively. Always people sitting on the terrace outside. There's going to be a huge lineup to get inside, so you got to keep that in mind on weekends. But their shots, their crema is excellent. And maybe get the ricotta donut too. It's like taking a cannoli but serving it in a softer dough as opposed to the harder shell. And I don't think I'm really doing this justice because trying to narrow it down to 5 coffee shops, that's hard for me to do. Maybe if I did a top 10 or if I did more extensive lists, then I could probably elaborate a little bit more. Ooh, need to get some high quality hydration too. So Andrew's also asking, what are your top 5 local beers and where to drink them? Well, my personal favorite of all the beers that I have is the Boreal IP du Nord-Est. I like the combination of the hops in there where it's a bit bitter, but the hops are also a bit fruity, so you get some tropical flavors like pineapple, passion fruit, peach, among other stuff, and it has a good strength to it. For that, you can get it in most grocery stores, beer specialty stores, but it's also served in a lot of bars. Go around the plateau, you'll get no shortage of these bars that sell that on tap. I guess next one I could say is the 50 Cream Ale from the Dispensaire. In the last year, I've really grown to enjoy cream ales just because it has a really nice finish. It goes down very smooth and they're light. And in fact, that one is on Prince Arthur Street East, not far from Newsome Cafe, which I talked about before because of my family connection with that. And I love the can because it always makes me think of a Labatt 50, which, I drink from time to time for sentimental reasons. Next one I could think of is the Gaia. That you can get at Benelux, specifically the one that's located on Sherbrooke around Place des Arts. That one, it was one of my introductions to microbreweries, period, outside of Brewtopia. And that one, unlike a lot of other beers, instead of using barley, they use wheat, but it's supposed to be a Belgian style where they also add some orange and coriander in it, so it has a very unique flavor compared to some other beers. I guess I'm also a fan of the Angus IPA from La Succursale. It's stronger on the IPA side. It's like more standard issue, but it also feels like it's a bit more amberish, like a slightly sweet. And I like that one because it's also close to, it's part of my family's history because my father was a railroader, and since the Angus yard or the remnants of the old Angus shop for Canadian Pacific Railway is just like a couple of blocks away from where that brewery is located. Not to mention that brewery is on 10th Avenue in Rosemont, so it's also a few blocks south from where my grandmother used to live. So yeah, it makes me think back to warm memories. Now, if I was to think of a final beer that I love, like local beers, I remember having a really good grisette over at Le Reservoir that they tend to have for summertime. Grisettes are farmhouse ales or saisons that are more with cereal, with more fruit. It's very refreshing, but it's also something one of my friends would say tastes like eating grass. I know. Every time I do a video and reference that, she probably gets mad, but I'm going to run it to the ground like a good comedian does. Favorite Montreal festival? Well, hands down, it's going to be the Jazz Festival that happens in July. I love outdoor music. I love music in general, but I don't really go to much shows these days. That's always a good reason to check out some of the local bands or, have a couple of drinks over there while checking the sights and sounds and scenery and just seeing everybody get together for a great concert. I know there was one year I did one page show, and that was for Vandergraaf Generator, like an old progressive rock band from the 1960s, 1970s that reunited sometime in the 2000s. I remember I caught them, and one of the guys sitting over there was saying that the last time he saw them was back in 1977 when they were touring Montreal. So it's like, yeah, people who were going to check them out like 30 years after the fact, and here I am as a new fan, which is kind of crazy. That's one of them. And I guess the other favorite one of mine is the Montreal Ukrainian Festival, mostly because of my heritage. And it's a good way to get the La Brosse Ukie style lager and getting the varenikes or pierogies or however you want to call it made on the spot, and see some of the other vendors there too, and watch some musicians that are local or even come from Ukraine just to perform there. So it's a great way to kind of get tied into my heritage, even because I don't really have the same, I don't have the same connection with the community as I used to with my, from when my grandparents were around, but it's always a good way to go back to my roots. And I'm probably just missing a lot of festivals, but the truth is, those two always stand out for me, and I always try to document it. But it's Montreal. There's no shortage of stuff happening. Do you read any local comic book artists? I don't really read much comics these days. I mean, I know some of the classic Batman comics, like The Long Halloween, Killing Joke, Year One, but I don't really know much local stuff. It's just too bad because I know there's some good stuff out there. I just don't have the time to absorb everything with all my other stuff I try to do. What are some of your favorite edgy Montreal spots or neighborhoods? I like how you say edgy all in capital letters. Edgy. I guess when I think edgy, I'm thinking of dive bars. And one that kind of stands out to me is Piranha Bar in St. Catherine, right across from Eaton's. I know because that place used to be a poster shop that had a Pink Floyd poster that scared the shit out of me as a 6 or 7 year old. But there, it's a good selection of beer. It's like very grungy. The music could go anywhere between Judas Priest to Ozzy Osbourne to maybe some Fear Factory. I think I've heard some black metal there. And even go into Motown or other classics. So it's a bit all over the map, and that's something I enjoy. But the fact that it also has the St. Ambroise New England IPA and especially cheap Tremblay for happy hour, it makes it worthwhile. Now, edgy neighborhoods. I suppose Hochelaga is pretty edgy in some ways, but I don't really go there as often. Maybe even Point St. Charles, depending on where you go, or at least the look of it, just because of how old style it is. I'll have to do a few more videos, and maybe eventually I'll get back to you on that. And favorite Montreal acts and bands. You know, Montreal does have a rich musical history. Like modern days, you probably got Arcade Fire that hit it big internationally because they had some roots here. For me, I like a lot of 80s new wave, but one that stands out is always Men Without Hats. Yep, Safety Dance. If you haven't watched my video on Lester's Deli, then you probably didn't even know that they're Canadian. Yep, they're from Montreal, and they're Ukrainian, so it means it ties into a lot of my own heritage. But it's good stuff. Upbeat, danceable, crazy synths there. That's like my favorite one I could think of right off the top of my head. Without thinking about the box, without thinking about Rational Youth. Harmonium, I guess, if you want like Quebec's equivalent to Peter Gabriel era Genesis. That's just what I could think of right now. Next up, Angers 98 or Angers 98. I don't know which way I should pronounce it, so I'm just going to say it both ways to cover my ass. What's the strangest place you've wandered into while exploring? Well, I suppose that one of the strangest bars I've been to was Chez Ernest. A funny thing is that it seemed to have opened up the year I did my Road to Little Ukraine Rosemont video back in 2021. But that one I only really visited in 2022, and I was kind of taken aback by the decor there. They got a great brew menu. The wines there look decent scotches. They even have a selection of absinthe, which I've only done once in my life, and I'm eventually thinking I should document if I ever do it again. But it's all the decor that really stood out. It's like brick overlay. You got the beer taps that have like dried out insects, or at least mock-ups of dried out insects covered in some kind of I guess a resin or covered in epoxy. It's like they're encased within the tap. All along the wall, you got this skulls, images of plague doctors. Even on the top, you got chandeliers hanging. It almost feels like something that they kind of raided from your grandmother's house and then just hung up around there. So it's one of those that's like all over the map, but kind of cool. And if you do go on a Sunday, they do have improv night. Go on a Tuesday, that's when they give free swing dance lessons. I haven't been there yet, but it always looks like fun whenever I see it. Next up is from Xander Abel. Which new place surprised you the most? Well, that's actually one question. Second question is, what were your top 3 musical events of 2024? Cheers, mate. Your stuff is always inspiring. Well, I try to do my job. At least I think that's my job. If you're asking me what places surprised me the most, I guess the 2 of them I could think of is Verdun on Wellington, because my point of reference for going there was originally because of Game Zone that used to exist, mostly for the used video game shops, and one bakery over there, Sweet Lee's Rustic Bakery, which is kind of nice. It was only like in 2022 when I went back there and I realized, oh wait, there's a whole bunch of places I could go grab a drink or nice restaurants to try out. I guess it just surprised me because I didn't know the extent of what was around there. But the other one that surprised me, I think, was going back into NDG. I know I went into NDG because of my Concordia days, because you have the Loyola campus that's over there, like on the border of NDG and Montreal West. And with them, you got Sherbrooke Street, which has a few nice shops. There was like one place that had a Run NDG shirt that was on the window, which made me think it was looking like the Run DMC logo. I thought that was fucking hilarious. But it was also because of Monkland Avenue. Like I've heard about Monkland, I've heard of some nice stuff there, but I just didn't see it until March 2024 when I was around there. You have the Pigeon Cafe, you got Milk Cafe. Acqua e Farina is a very nice Italian restaurant. That's actually one of them that I visited when I was having a glass of wine on camera. And even one of the old Orchard taverns, unlike the one downtown where it seemed like it's a larger one, that one felt like it was more quaint, cozy. It's like, you know, one of those neighborhood bars where everyone knows your name and it's very friendly. I guess that's one thing I could say is like those two things surprised me for that. But I'm sure that if I was to go back to some episodes, then I'll come up with more ideas. And what were your top 3 musical events of 2024? Well, Xander, you already know that I don't go to many concerts these days. That's one benefit, that's one disadvantage of not working at HMV anymore is you're kind of out of the loop with what's going on with the pop charts or all the concerts are coming along or even events. Like I could say Heavy MTL, getting to see Rush number times from my past years were definitely highlights. But who knows what's going to happen? Maybe I'll catch some other shows. Oh yeah, but I guess if you want a hint, your show last September was pretty awesome. Like you guys did pretty good renditions of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And actually I did highlight you guys before. I'll put a card in the top right corner and you can watch that one when I did a walk in Hochelaga. Then eventually to see the Red Hot Chili Pup here. I see what you did there. Now, we got Jan Witwet. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that name right because I don't know Dutch and I'm afraid if I try to do it properly, I'm going to sound like I'm coughing up a hairball. When are you going to find out that recipe for the Hawaiian mug we gave you 2 years ago? That was the assignment. Oh, yeah, I'll give you a bit of backstory. So 2022 is when I got this little gift from them. This tiki glass and this necklace, which I guess I might as well commit to the full look. There, don't I look dandy with this? Hang on. It's missing something. There. Problem solved. So I was given this and I was given the glass under the condition of trying to come up with a recipe for a cocktail to make at home. Thing is that if you've been following me for a while, I don't really do cocktails on my own. At most I would go get a Negroni or an Aperol Spritz if I'm at a bar, but otherwise it's rare that I actually mix stuff for myself. I'm more of a whiskey guy where I take it straight or I'm going to do beer or wine, so sorry if I kind of broke your heart, but I am going to be doing that eventually. Oh, and for the record, Jan, I think we're due to share whiskey. Like, I have a few bottles I've been meaning to split with you, and I remember when we went to In Loire together, the look on your face when you're seeing the menu of 14 pages of whiskey, 350 different types of whiskeys, you were salivating at the mouth, and I knew we got to go back. Just saying. And speaking of whiskeys, we're getting to the last question, which is from Julie Belrose once again, where Julie asks, can you do an episode where you talk about the different types of whiskeys, which ones you have liked to try, and which ones you really hated and why? Which whiskey would you drink for which occasion, and which one would you suggest for each occasion? Maybe a top 5 best ones and top 5 worst ones that you drank. You really ask for a mouthful with that, because top 5 best whiskeys and top 5 worst whiskeys, that's hard to come up with. I suppose that if you're to ask me about ones I don't really care about, I'm not a big fan of the light floral ones. Like think Canadian Club, Jameson, maybe JB Weiser. Like those have a very light flavor. I like it which is a bit more medium bold, like a lot of the Johnny Walkers, or a Bowmore that has a very strong smoky smell and a smoky taste, because I really like it when it has some smoke in it. In terms of other ones I've had that might not have been that good, I think it all comes down to disappointment more than anything. I remember we were at the In Loire, like me, Canadian Dave, and Marcucci were together. This is like before the pandemic hit, so it was like one of our last hurrahs before shit hit the fan. We were going there, we were trying out the Glenfiddich IPA experiment, because what seemed like that they did was they took a whiskey, fermented in a barrel that was used to store some old IPA, so we thought it would have a bit more of a hoppy taste. Sadly, it didn't seem to have that kind of taste, and it was actually a few weeks later that I met up with Dave again. We were at Vieux Dublin, or Old Dublin, and we tried the Jameson Caskmates. They make one which was fermented in a stout barrel and one in an IPA barrel. And I found that the Jameson actually had a lot more flavor in it than we expected. Thought the cheap one is better than the Scotch. Like who would have thought that? Of course, some occasions are better for others because there's a lot of stuff that I drink that is not meant for shooters. Case in point, Johnny Walker Blue Label that my friend Sam, who just asked a question here, is more than familiar with. We were getting together with people for New Year's Eve, he had a little bit of Blue Label left that we split together, like had a small shot, because he knew that we're the two that we would be able to enjoy a good whiskey without having to shoot it. Because we could guarantee that everyone else that came were going to be shooters, and they would probably want to down it without really knowing how much it costs per shot. Keeping in mind that these are people who, if they're going for tequila, they probably would have had the scorpion that was in the bottle too. I know, weird, isn't it? But that's only a handful of whiskey stories I have. Like, I know I could do a few other episodes or another episode of just that. If you're asking me, like, which occasion is best for which ones, I know. It's a bit like with beer, a little bit like with wine, where certain pairings go best with certain types of food. I don't have the same knowledge about that, so I'll have to do some research before I could get back to you. But hey, all that to say is that whiskey could be another option down the road. And there you have it, everybody. That's all the questions I received for this first Q&A edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe. So once again, thanks so much for sending in your questions. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate sharing these stories with you and going back to a few other memories. And who knows, maybe if I come up with another idea, then I can probably set up another one down the road. But until then, if you want to see more of this, you know what to do. Click that subscribe button below and give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the wanders, the stories, the cooking, and everything that comes with this. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, leave in the comments section, and I'll see if I can take care of it one of these days. But until then, take care, and see you next time. Well, I like this necklace, but I don't know if I should get a Hawaiian shirt and a hula skirt to go with the whole getup. I don't think anyone wants to see it on camera.